Hi, I'm Dan. My wife and I recently completed hiking the O Trek in Torres del Paine National Park in Chile and wanted to talk about the experience and the conditions that we encountered there so that if you are thinking about doing either the O Trek or the W Trek, you can make an informed decision about what the best footwear for you is going to be based on the conditions that exist there. I'd start by saying that if you are thinking about doing either the O or the W treks, my wife and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's one of the most beautiful places that we've ever been. So I don't think that anybody would regret choosing to do it. When we were there, we saw people wearing everything from running shoes to trail runners, light hiking boots, all the way up to kind of heavier trekking boots and light mountaineering boots. And it seemed like some were better suited for the trek than others. So we'll talk about the conditions and some considerations before you make your choice on what's going to be best for you. First thing that I would say is one of the things that surprised me about the O Trek is how much flat walking there is. I'd say 60% or more of the trail doesn't have significant elevation gain. It's more rolling or undulating terrain. Certainly, there are several days that do have substantial elevation gain, the John Gardner Pass and French Valley and the hike up to base towers. But there is a lot in between where you're just walking on flat, gradual, or rolling terrain. Under those conditions, a heavy boot with a stiff sole, like a mountaineering boot or a heavy trekking boot, in my opinion, for me, wouldn't be the most comfortable thing to be wearing there. I ended up wearing a relatively light mid hiker that had a rockered sole. And for the conditions there, with so much flat walking, it was a great choice because the light boot with the rockered sole gave you kind of a natural step or a natural gait when you were walking, which was really appreciated in all of the flat sections. Another thing regarding the conditions that you'll encounter there is there are a few days where the trail is a little bit rocky. Going up over the John Gardner Pass, there's a pretty good path up the pass, but you're going through some scree. So there's risk of some scrapes on your ankles and things like that with lower shoes. I wouldn't say there's anything like super technical, scrambly or anything like that, but it definitely is rocky. And then coming down the John Gardner Pass, it's relatively steep. There's a path through scree, but it is relatively steep. Another thing that is noteworthy, though, is going up into the French Valley. The trail for a section goes up a seasonal creek bed, which is fine if it's dry, but the weather changes really quickly there. On the day that we went up the French Valley, it was raining in the morning, snowing up in the higher up in the valley. And that seasonal creek bed that the trail goes up had running water down for a pretty good section of it. We saw one group of people wearing trail runners who had soaked their feet, and when it was so cold that day that they just couldn't get their feet wet and ended up turning around. So under those conditions, something waterproof I think would have been a better choice. So a Gore-Tex hiking boot or at least a waterproof trail runner would have been better for the conditions. The boot that I had was waterproof, so I made it through with dry feet and socks. The idea with trail runners, sometimes it's an advantage if you get them wet because they can dry out so rapidly compared to boots. In Patagonia, the weather changes pretty quickly. It's very unpredictable. Where we live and do a lot of our hiking in Washington State, people often say you get 4 seasons of weather in a single day. What we experienced in Torres del Paine is there's times when you're getting 4 seasons of weather in a single hour. On our day going up the French Valley, it started out rain, then rain and wind, then turned to snow, and then by later in the afternoon it was 60 degrees. So a lot of everything in a single day. But I don't think that I would have wanted to spend that whole day in wetsuit shoes. So I was pretty happy to have the waterproof boots. Another consideration is your pack weight on how robust of a boot or shoe you want. We were carrying about 30-pound packs, which It's probably slightly heavier than a normal backpacking trip for us, but lighter than a mountaineering trip for us. But at no time did we feel like it was a burden, or did we feel like we wanted more ankle support than we had. But certainly that is something to consider. If you're not used to carrying a pack, you may want a little bit more ankle support, or depending on how heavy your pack is. We didn't carry tents. We stayed in tents provided by the camps that we stayed at. And we brought about 5 days worth of food and snacks, and then supplemented that with other meals purchased at the refugios. And so that helped us keep our pack weight down, and eliminated the need for, like more ankle support. The last thing as a consideration is going up to base towers. The trail gets a little bit rocky. There's some boulder hopping and stuff like that. It's never anything where there's any exposure or you need like hands and feet or anything like that. But some good grip on your shoes is probably a good idea. It was wet when we went up there that morning. We had pretty good weather and good visibility for most of the O-Trek, except for our days to the base tower when it was just really socked in and raining and howling and whatnot. It was great. It's still part of the adventure. But I'm glad that I had a boot that had decent traction, so that's a consideration as well. Soon I'll be posting a video about whether the O-Trek or W-Trek is going to be a better option for you, and with thoughts about whether staying in tents or staying in the refugios is good, and what sort of things you can find at the different camps. So if you are planning to do either the O-Trek or the W-Trek and are interested in hearing about that, subscribe to my channel and I'll be posting those soon. Feel free to leave questions or comments and I'll respond as I'm able. Thank you.